All right, ladies, today I want to talk to you about red flags. Now, when I say the word red flags, I know a lot of people automatically think about the things that you need to be paying attention to, that your partner, that your date is potentially doing or not doing, that might be red flags, that might be reasons for you to walk away. Now, in this video, I want to flip this upside down because I don't hear a lot of people talking about the things that we are doing, that subconscious as well as conscious behaviors, things that we're saying and we're doing at the early stages of dating that might be not only pushing people away from us, but also potentially sometimes encouraging a certain type of behavior that we don't really want, certain conversations, or maybe even certain types of relationships that we don't really want. So ladies, if you often feel like people either lose interest really quickly at the early stages, maybe while you're still talking to them on a dating app, or maybe after the first date or leading up to the first date, or maybe you find out that although they said they wanted a relationship at the early stages when you just connected with them, at some point they switched that up and they said we just want friendship, or they just want, to hang out, or they just want a casual type of relationship, then these reasons, I'm going to give you 5 of them today, might be why this is happening, might be why you're either pushing people completely away to a point where they are either ghosting you or just telling you to change their mind, right? Or they're displaying the wrong type of behavior, right? And telling you that they want a different type of relationship than you want. Now, before I go any further, if you're new here, my name is Lion. I talk about dating and relationships from a perspective of a man, specifically catered to women. So if that's something that you're into, if you want to learn more about that, don't be shy. Hit the subscribe button right there. Leave me a comment if you're new here and tell me what brings you here. Where did you come from? Did you come from other platforms, or did you just find me here on YouTube? So without further ado, let's just dive right into it. All right, so number 1, and this is something very human and something that we often do subconsciously, and often we don't realize why we turn people off away from us. And while it's very easy to notice when someone else does it, it's often very difficult to notice when we are displaying that type of behavior. And what I'm talking about is negativity. When we display any level of negativity, especially at the early stages of dating. Now, I'm sure as I'm saying this, you're watching this and you can agree with me that, hey, it's good to be a positive person and talk about positive things. I'm not generally a negative person, so that doesn't really apply to me. But before you discount that right away, let me talk about what negativity is all about at these early stages of dating. Have you ever went on a date, or maybe even before the first date, maybe the first time that you connected on the dating app, and you automatically felt like you could bond with that person by complaining about certain things? So you said things like maybe, I don't really like online dating. Or maybe you complain about, the last guy you connected with on online dating, right? And you kind of felt like, oh, you can bond over this because you're sure that, the guy you're talking to right now might have also had, unfortunate or less than successful experiences on dating apps in general. So you might be complaining about things like, modern dating, or you might be complaining about things like social media. You might be complaining about things like, dating apps, right? Or you might be even complaining straight up about a past relationship. You're complaining about your ex-boyfriend. You're complaining about, whatever that thing is. Whether you're just complaining about your day and people want to connect with other people. The reason why we are looking for romantic relationships at the end of the day, right? It's for selfish reasons. It's because we want to elevate our lives. We want to make them better, right? So we genuinely gravitate towards positivity. We genuinely gravitate towards someone who is going to make our life easier, who's going to make our lives happier, who's going to make our lives a little bit more enjoyable. So if we connect with someone, and even if what they're talking about and what they're complaining about are legitimate things, and even if in the short term, we might kind of bond over the fact that we are frustrated about the same things, in the long run, people lose interest, especially romantic interest, because we want to connect romantically with people who genuinely seems to be able to elevate our lives, right? People who can make us laugh, people who we can have these positive conversations about. Now, I'm not saying that there's never a time and place about talking about real things or things that bother us, but definitely not at these early stages of dating when we barely know the person. And these first impressions are extremely important. So if you feel like the person is already kind of draining our energy right off the bat, we generally don't want to build a long-term relationship with them. Again, even though we might agree with what they're saying. So please stop complaining, right? If you have nothing positive to say about a certain subject, especially at these early stages, don't say anything at all. Instead, focus on the things that are positive. All right, so number two, and again, this type of behavior is very easy to notice when someone is doing to us. We know that we don't like how it feels. We can't really put our finger on it and understand why we don't like the situation, but we don't really generally like to have a conversation when a person is displaying this type of behavior. When we are very critical, when we are looking for reasons not to connect with the person instead of genuinely taking the time to get to know them. And this is something I see a lot with a lot of my clients, right? As soon as they start dating someone new, instead of genuinely just taking their time to get to know one another, understanding that the dating process, right, is something that takes time. There is no ways around it. Right? A certain level of intimacy, a certain level of vulnerability, a point where I feel like I'm safe with you, a point where I feel like I want to share some of the real things, right? The point where we both feel like we can take off our mask and just become the real us. You know what I mean? It's something that takes a little bit of time. We can't rush that process. So if we feel like we go on a first date or we go on that second date, or maybe even before we go on the first date and we're just texting at this point, and we feel like you might be interrogating us, you might be looking for reasons, right? Instead of asking open-ended questions that might tell us about who we are a little bit, right? And creating that positive conversation where we both are getting more and more comfortable with each other and we start opening up, you start firing up these questions that we know are trying to disqualify us, right? So you're asking all of these potentially deal breaker questions, or we feel like you have an agenda, that you have this mental checklist that you're going through one by one and asking us these disqualifying questions, right? If you're not aligning with me on these topics, we kind of feel like you're going to end the conversation. As soon as we feel like someone is doing that to us, we get very defensive. We get closed off. You do not make us feel accepted. You do not make us feel like you were genuinely taking an interest in us. Instead, you were rather just trying to find reasons why this might not work, just so that you can save your own ego by rejecting us before we ever have a chance to do that to you. I know that so many people today are really obsessed with the sentence, I don't want to waste my time, but I want to make you understand that dating is never a waste of time, because there is no way around it. The only way to really get to know a person, the only way to really make sure that you have that compatibility or you don't, the only way to really make sure that you are attracted to each other on multiple levels, right, is really taking the time to get to know one another. Right? We cannot just sit down and have a line of questioning right from the get-go to try to either qualify or disqualify a person. We genuinely have to spend time around each other in order to become comfortable with each other and open up and really get to know one another. All right, so this conveniently allows me to transition to the third point. Do not rush the process. This is something that we both men and women feel very, very strongly about. As soon as we feel like someone is trying to rush the process, we're getting the feeling, right? We can taste it in the air. We can smell the desperation, and that turns us off. That makes us run as fast as we can in the other direction, right? Think about it this way. Have you ever been maybe at some office trying to buy something? So you either are signing your lease, you're buying a house, or maybe you're buying a car, or any other big purchase like that. And at some point, have you ever felt like the salesperson was literally trying to put the pen in your hand and trying to put the contract right in front of you and literally pointing the finger to the dotted line where you have to sign? As soon as they do that, we feel rushed. Right? Especially if we haven't really taken the time to ask all our questions yet, we feel turned off by it. We feel like we are getting the wrong end of that deal. We feel like we're getting the short stick. Right? We feel like we're getting scammed. We feel like if we have taken a little bit more time to figure things out, we'll understand that we're not getting that good of a deal. The same applies in dating situations. If we ever feel like it only has been maybe a couple of weeks or maybe a month or two even at this point, right? Don't just think that this is something that only happens on the first date or the second date, right? There is a time and place to have these serious conversations. There's a time and place to move your relationship forward. But again, dating takes a little bit of time, right? It takes a few weeks to maybe even a few months to really figure out, more about each other. Make sure that we have that compatibility factor. Make sure that we go beyond just the physical attraction, right? And when we say we like each other, it's more than just, I like your face or your body. Like, I'm really aligning with you on so many values, on so many beliefs, on so many goals goals that I want to actually build a relationship with you. And again, not just because I'm infatuated with you, not just because we have chemistry or because we're physically attracted to each other. Again, these things take time. Do not try to rush this. If you're ever at the point where it's only been a few weeks or maybe even a couple of months at this point, and you already are trying to force conversations about, exclusivity, or force conversations about marriage, or, a long-term relationship, or moving in with each other, right? If you're trying to force all of these things, right, then that's your cue. Then you're probably going to appear desperate, and you're probably going to push the other person further away from you. Again, we're not talking here about them giving you the bare minimum. We're not talking about someone just, that wants to hang out with you, or someone that, just wants to spend time with you and progress this relationship. Again, if you ever have to remind them of that, if you ever have to chase them for that, then that's your cue that that's the wrong person anyway, right? But if the person is putting in the effort to see you, to spend time with you, to continue getting to know you, to do activities with you, to take you out on real dates and do actual things with you, right? Take your time. Take your time to continue on this journey to get to know one another. You'll find out that a lot of these conversations, right, are going to come naturally. Now, the really important thing to do in these situations, while you are still at the point where you don't have these guarantees, right, when you're not in a committed relationship yet, before you get married, before you move in together, right, it's really important that you know what your boundaries are, right? So you don't get to a situation where you have already been giving away all of these relationship benefits, but you're not in a relationship yet. Then you will definitely start desperately trying to rush the process. So again, don't rush the process, and set boundaries at these early stages, right? So you don't feel like somebody's taking advantage of you, like somebody is taking all of these relationship benefits, yet are not assuming all of these relationship responsibilities as well. All right, so let's get on with it. Number 4, negative self-talk. Now, I'm sure you have heard someone say these things before. I am pretty sure that you might also have said that to someone before. And that's when we start talking negatively about ourselves in front of other people. So I'll give you an example. So someone might be talking to you and say, hey, you know what? I have this, horrible, terrible temper. Like, I cannot keep my cool. If something happens, I just need to do this and this and that. Or if someone tells you, oh, you know what, good thing that you're good with money, because if we ever get into a relationship, I am terrible with money. I cannot save $1 if my life depended on it. Or things like, I'm not a punctual person. I'm always late. I will be late to my own funeral. And this is one of my favorites, people that tell you that they have no filter. People that just tell you, oh, you know what, I just have no filter. I just say whatever comes up to my mind. So if people get hurt, they get hurt. But that's just who I am. I'm just that kind of person. I just say whatever I want to say, whenever I want to say it. I'm not trying to hurt anyone. That's just who I am. If someone says any of these things, they're already preparing you for their shitty behavior. Or if you are displaying these things, you are preparing them for your shitty behavior. And if you are doing these things, I know that sometimes we often do and say these things and we use humor, right? We say that as a joke. We say that, oh, well, I have a horrible temper, or I have, terrible skills when it comes to like saving money, or whatever these things are. But I want you to understand that when you do that, you're literally telling them exactly how you're going to treat them in the future. All right, so number 5, you have no boundaries. Boundaries are probably the cornerstone of being able to build healthy relationships. If you don't have boundaries at the early stages of dating, you're either guaranteed to either push people away from you, or you're going to be attracting the wrong type of people as well as the wrong type of behavior. You see, people are testing each other all the time. We do that from a very young age. I don't know how many of you watching this have kids, but you already know that your 2-year-old, your 3-year-old is constantly testing your limits, is constantly testing your boundaries. They often want to see how far they're going to go. It doesn't come from a malicious place. It's not because people are, mean, or people are just horrible because they're trying to test you. That's what being a human being is all about. Adults do it all the time as well. Whether you're walking down the street, you're applying for a job, you're having a conversation with your best friend or your boss or your sister or your brother, right? And especially in romantic situations, we are constantly testing each other. We constantly want to see, who are you, right? We constantly want to see what your boundaries are, right? And based on these things, we create an impression of who you are, and we then align and adjust our behavior when it comes to you. So your child is going to test you out and is going to then adjust their behavior towards you based on your boundaries. Your boss is going to do the same thing. Your employees and your friends and your romantic partners and everybody else is going to treat you essentially based on how you treat yourself. So if you show up, right, and based on your boundaries, so if you show up with absolutely no boundaries, when you let the other person kind of dictate where things are going to go, and if they want to kiss you on the first night, they will, and if they want to take you home and you say, oh, well, they're cute, and you sleep with them and you do all of these things, don't get me wrong. It's not like they might not enjoy these levels of physical intimacy with you. They might really enjoy that, but they're also going to put you in a very different bracket. They're going to test you and see how far they can go. And if they see that there is no stops, there is no boundaries, right? They're just going to feel like they're completely within their right to take everything that they want to take from you without having to really give you anything back. You see, that's what boundaries are all about. It's making sure that you guys are both getting what you want. Making sure that you're getting what you want and they're getting what they want. And that's what a healthy relationship is all about. Make sure that both of our wants and needs are met. But if you have no boundaries, then people are able to take everything they want from you without necessarily feeling that they ever have to give you anything back. I know it's very easy to look at this as a victim. I know it's very easy to feel like you were in the right because you were a nice person and you were just giving and giving and giving, right? And they were the horrible, maybe narcissistic person that just took all of this away from you and just left. But again, we have to look at ourselves. We have to look at the why, right? Why are we encouraging? Why are we allowing this type of behavior? And usually it comes down to our inability to set boundaries. So it's extremely important that we show up with boundaries at these early stages, right? And I talk about boundaries in my private coaching group. I talk about boundaries in my courses. I talk about boundaries in my one-on-one coaching. If you're interested in that, check my Instagram page for the link for that, right? But boundaries are perhaps among the most important, right, things that we need to understand what they really are. Boundaries is not just when you say no based on how you feel like in the moment. So if you feel like you don't want to kiss him that night and you say no, that's not a boundary. So if you want to understand what your boundaries are, how to set your boundaries, how to respect your own boundaries, how to communicate your boundaries if you have to, right? This is something that you really have to work on. And again, if you show up without boundaries, people will continue giving you way less than you deserve and offering nothing in return. And it's not because you're just falling on the wrong people. It's not because you're falling on these narcissists or you attract these bad people. The same exact person is going to treat two different people very differently at the exact same time based on how these people, right, individually allow him or her to treat them, based on how they treat themselves, based on whether or not they have these boundaries. So if one person has boundaries and another one doesn't, I'm going to treat them. You're going to treat them subconsciously, right? We don't even realize this. We're going to subconsciously treat them very differently. All right, ladies, so this brings me to the end of this video. Let me know in the comments, what are some of your own behaviors? What are some of your unconscious or maybe conscious patterns and red flags? What have you been displaying in the past? Maybe some of the things that you feel based on this video, and after watching this video, realize that you need to work on, that you need to change, that you need to stop doing. Let me know. I'm really curious. Where do you guys really struggle the most? I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace.